Hey guys, welcome back. So this time I'm going to open my project using Visual Studio's interface. So I open Visual Studio and then to the left they're showing me all of the recent projects that I have done. So I'm just going to select my project from the list. I can also pin it because maybe I have a bunch of projects working on and I want this one to be at the top always. So I can just pin it and then I can just go ahead and click it and open it. And then Visual Studio will launch with my projects. So Visual Studio is putting us right back where we left off, which is when we were doing that input-output program. But this time we're going to be looking at some data types. So I'm going to create a new project. So just right-click the solution, go to Add, and then select New Project. And then when the console comes up or the dialog box comes up, I just select console app.NET Core and then click next. And then this time the project name that I want is variables and data types. So variables and data types. And then I click create. Now, I did say that C# boasts a wide collection of data types. There are simple data types and there are user-defined data types. So the basic ones that you have, we call those the simple data types, which are like the string and, for numbers and so on. And we're going to go through some of them. That being said, there are a lot. So I'm not going to go through every single one. And along the way, we may end up using one or a few that we didn't cover in this video. So I'll go through the basic ones that you will definitely need to know. But as we go along, you will see others that contextually you may need. I also want to point out that C# is what you call a strongly typed language. So that means that if you are going to declare a variable that should hold text, then it's going to treat it like text. So even if I put 1 as in the numeral 1 inside of a text variable, it won't treat it like a number to do math with it. So you have to choose your data types very carefully based on what operation you want to carry out. So let's start off. So we did say string. So let me say variable declarations and types. So I'm going to use this section just to define some variables and we can look at what they are. So one, string. So we went through string already. String, and I'm going to say name. Then maybe we want to collect the age also. Now, are we going to store somebody's age as string? Or are we going to store their age as maybe a number? Because if I tell you I'm 10 years old and then you want to do some math to say, okay, as a 10-year-old, this is mathematically how you're going to be in XYZ or something like that. You may want to do a mathematical operation. You cannot use a string variable for math. So you want to use what you call an int. So int is short for integer. And that one, an integer is basically a number that doesn't have any decimal places. So even if you put a decimal number inside age, like you said, you're 22.5 years old, because it's an int, it's going to ignore the 0.5. You do have other variables that collect that. So I could probably make one that says salary. So I could say double salary. So double will take a decimal point, all right? You also have another data type called float that does decimal points, but then based on the number of decimal places, that's where they're really different. The number of decimal places and the precision that is allowed. In simpler terms, you may have like a value like pi, which we all know as a decimal is 3.14 something. Double and float may end up storing different values because one will be more precise than the other. You also have what you call a char. So char is short for character, and a char variable is usually used for a single, well, not usually used. It is used, for a single character. So a case study or a case for that would be like gender, right? So char gender, you're either M or F. Another very popular basic data type that we would see is Boolean. So we have bool, and then I'm going to use this one to say working. So bool means yes or no. It's either true or false, right? It's either 1 or 0. There's no other value that can go inside a bool, but true or false. So let's recap real quickly. So we have string name. So string takes text. It takes anything that is, it can take any alphanumeric and character combination. It's just going to receive something and then print it back. You can't do any math on the numbers you put in there. You'll have to do conversions. And while it's relatively easy to do conversions, I just recommend that you use the right variable when you need it for a certain thing. So if we have a string, it's clearly not to do any math. If we have an integer, it's because we want a number, then we're not expecting decimal places. If we have a double, that means we can get a number and we might have decimal places. We have char because we're expecting one character. This one character can be of any persuasion, meaning it can be a letter, a number, a special character, but it's only going to be one. So you can put your name inside of a char, right? So for this example, we're going to accept M or F for gender. And then we have the Boolean, right, which can only be true or false. Now, we just wrapped up a session about prompting users for input. So what I'm going to do is prompt them for their name, their age, their salary, their gender, and if they're working or not. So I'm just going to do about 2 of them, and then I'm going to allow you to try and do the rest. So I'm going to say console dot, and then remember we have to print to the screen, hey, I'm asking you for this data right here, right? So I'm going to use write. And then you will see the difference in the prompt when I use write instead of write line. But then I'm prompting this time for a name. So I'm going to say enter your name, colon. And then after that, I'm going to say name should get the value from the console. So name is now equal to console.readLine and open and close parentheses. That's the name prompt, right? Now, to expedite this process, I can just copy. If I want, I can just copy those 2 lines, go down and paste, and then I just change out the text. So I ask for name. This time I want age. And then the pattern is the same. All I have to say is age is equal to console.readLine. Now notice I'm getting an error when I'm asking for the age, all right? And then that's where our conversions come into play. So I did say that this is variable data type and conversions, right? So in this situation, it is saying that there's an error, cannot implicitly convert type string to int. Now, this didn't receive that error because console.readLine is getting some keyboard input from the console, which it is transporting to the variable in the form of a string. So in this situation, I did say that it's strongly typed, so you can't put a word inside of a variable that is expecting a number. So this number variable is expecting a number to be input, but the mechanism we're using to get the data is transporting a string. So that's a problem, right? So now we have to run what we call a conversion, where we accept the string, convert it to int, and all of that before it gets into the variable. So what I'm going to do is erase this, and I'm going to rewrite this line step by step. So C# gives us tools to convert, and literally they give us a class called convert. So we can write the word convert and then say dot. And then we have a number of conversions available to us. We can convert to int32, into double, to date time, all sorts of things. So I want to int 32, and then I open. So this is a function, right? And how do we know functions? It's because they have open and close parentheses. Then inside of this function, because notice it still has a red line, it's saying that it expects some value. All right, so now I need to tell it what exactly I want to convert. And what I want to convert is the input coming from the console. So I'm going to call the console.readLine. When it gets there, it's going to prompt the user. It's going to pause, get the input. When the user presses enter, so remember that this pauses for input until it sees enter. Once the person presses enter, it's then going to convert it to int, or 32-bit signed integer. All right, so just a fancy way of saying put it in an integer. And you did see to 32, int 32, and to int 16, and you may have seen all the numbers. The fact is, the larger the number is, the more bits required, right? So to 32 is pretty much standard. We can leave it with 32. And then once it is converted, then it is assigned to our age variable. And notice all is well in the universe. There are no more errors. So I'm going to do the rest, and I'm not going to do any conversions just yet. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to allow you to try and write the prompts for each of the other 3 variables, and then we can look at the potential errors together. All right, so I wrote the rest of my prompts and I changed the text accordingly. Enter your salary, enter your gender, and then for the one with working, I kind of changed the verbiage because once again, you want to tell the user what kind of data you're expecting from them. So you don't want to leave it up to them to infer what they should be putting in. So I said, are you working? True or false? And see, I spelled true wrongly. So true or false. So we're expecting them to enter the word true or the word false. But more importantly, notice how many errors we have. And the same reason that we had the error for age is the same reason we're having these errors, because console.readline is returning a string, but the string cannot be put into a double just like that. It can't be put into a char just like that. And it can't be put into a Boolean just like that. And as I said char, I noticed that I did not explicitly tell them that I'm expecting M or F. So if the person enters the word male or the word female, then that will cause a problem because this is only expecting one character, one letter, one, not a word, right? So I'm going to be a bit more explicit with this prompt, and I'm going to say M or F. All right. So with all of that done now, let's fix these conversion issues. So it's the same thing. We just have to say convert dot to double, and there we have to double. And then what are we converting? We're converting console.readline. So I open the parenthesis here. I need to make sure I close it. So this is a common error where we'll open it. Maybe we'll get up and go and get coffee and come back. And then we look at it one time and we say, oh, it's closed because there's a closed one, but we're not paying attention, right? So it's always good to open and close in the same sweep, and then you can get distracted afterwards. That will spare you a lot of heartache. So there we go. Double is, salary is expecting a double. So we're getting the input from the console, which is coming as text, converting it to double. So whether or not it has decimal places, it will treat it like it does, and then it will put it in our double. For char, we have convert dot to char. So you have a convert for almost every single data type that is in C#, right? So you have quite a few data types. I have quite a few ways to convert them. And I hope by now you realize that I did say case matters when we were creating our projects. Well, in the language itself, case does matter, because if I write convert with a capital C, that will never work because it doesn't know what convert with a common C. Sorry. If I write convert with a common C, it doesn't know what that is. So it will only detect it when I adhere to the strict rules and use my uppercase C for convert, not console, convert. And then I say dot, and then I have to Boolean as an option. And then I open parenthesis, and then I make sure to close my parenthesis. And there we have our functions, or our code or prompts, taking data and storing them into the different variables. Now, once I've done all of that, I want to print this person's profile back to the screen. So I'm going to do a little difference here with my printing to screen, and we're going to call this concatenation. So this is the process of joining strings together. So earlier, I would have had one console write that printed the static string and then another one to print the variable. This time, I just want to write one console.write, and I'm printing both the static string saying your name is colon, and then I'm putting the variable inside of that so it gets printed automatically, right? So there are many ways to do it. I'm going to show you maybe the easiest way right now, and as we go along, I'll probably do it the other way so that we can get up and running. Actually, I think we have enough data to print to look at all of the concatenation techniques. So I'm just going to go through all of them. So I'm just going to write the first one, to print the name. So I'm going to say console.write open parentheses, and I'll just put my semicolon there same time. Everybody codes differently. I just like doing it at the same time. And then I'm going to say your name is colon, and then I can use a plus sign. So we all know that the plus sign is used in math, right? Well, when we're talking about strings and printing sentences or printing to the screen, we can use the plus sign to say, I want to add this block of text to whatever other block of text. I can have as many blocks of text as I want and plus signs in between, right? I can do that. But in this situation, what I want to add to this static block of text is the value that is inside name. So I'm just going to say your name is static text plus name. So this is concatenation. So this will print one line saying your name is and whatever value was collected from the user at the time of input. All right. So I can just duplicate this, or well, no, let me write another one. So console.write. And then this time I want to print your age. So your age is colon. And then the next way I can concatenate is to use like placeholders and kind of have an array of variables to match these placeholders. So let me just demonstrate here. So I'm going to open curly brace, use a placeholder, and that's 0, and then close curly brace. And then what it's going to say is, I know I need to print your name is, and then I'm going to print the static text. But then this, as I said, is acting as a placeholder. So I need to define something that should be put into this placeholder. And what I do is after the block of text, I press comma, and then I can insert a variable. So the variable that I want to be inserted into the placeholder is age. All right. And then I'm going to print the salary to the screen. So same treatment, console.write. And then this time I'm going to do what we call interpolation, right? So this one, I'm going to start off with a $sign at the start of the string. So it's $, open and close quotation marks. And then I'm going to say $, your salary is colon, and then interpolation allows me to just use open and close braces and write the variable name right there inside of the static string. So it is salary. So I have one static string. I just have make sure I have the $sign, because without the $sign, then it will look more like the placeholder code. All right, and that would not be desirable. So with the $sign, instead of using a placeholder, I'm just opening the curly brace and putting the variable itself inside of my contiguous string. Contiguous means continuous, right? So all of the string is just one block, and we have our variable being rendered inside of that. So the reason I'm showing all of these, I can guarantee you this one will work, and this one will definitely work. Based on the version of .NET framework that you're using, and that influences the version of C# that you are using, you may or may not have access to the interpolation, right? So that's why I said there are many ways to do it, and it's good to understand and appreciate how. But I can guarantee you, if these two don't work, this one definitely will. And if this one works, this one definitely will. So you can pick your battle, pick whichever one you like the most, and even more specifically, whichever one actually works in your context. So I'm going to proceed with the simple one that I know works universally, and then I'm just going to make sure that I print the other two variables. So this one says your gender is, and then I'm printing gender. And then the next one says, are you working? Are you employed? No, you are employed. And we expect to see true or false, so then working. All right. Now, all of this is going to print out as one big block of text. It's going to look disgusting on the screen, but I'll show you why. So let's test it out. So my start project needs to be set to variables and data types. So I right click variables and data types, set as startup project, and then go ahead and start. All right. So let's take our program for a test drive. So I'm going to say test user is my name. I'm 22 years old. My salary is 2,500.30. Press enter. My gender is M. Enter. And am I working? True. I am working. And then when I press enter, you see that, okay, we just get one long line, everything in one line, no spaces. It's very difficult to read. And that's because we wrote with console.write and not console.writeLine. All right. So that's why we have to be very careful when we're using console.write and console.writeLine. So I'm just going to change this out to console.writeLine, and I can just copy and paste and do that mass replacement. And then let's just run again and see how the output looks. So we start off with our name, and I'm going to say test female user. Her age is 23. Her salary is 5,000.48 or 5,000, not 500. Gender is F. And then, but then she's currently unemployed. So working is false. And then when we do that now, we see the printout looking much better. We have a line per bit of information. Notice we have our static text, and then it is printing back the value. All right. So the conversion was it really only needed to be one way, because notice that the console is printing back the values, and we didn't have to convert from char to string, and we didn't have to do that to concatenate onto the string, right? So it's strict in some aspects and it's flexible in some. So once again, when we're collecting the string from the console, we have to convert it into whatever data type the variable that is receiving the data is. All right, so we have to do int conversion to store the int, double to store the double, etc., etc. But then when we're printing back to screen, we didn't have to convert from that data type to string to get it, well, attached to our string, right? So everything, when it's printing out, it will just contextually say, okay, yes, I know this is a Boolean, but let me just print it